Hey guys, it's Danny. Today it is not the 1st of April, it is the 2nd. We are a little bit behind schedule, but it doesn't matter. It is time to see the orchids we had in bloom for the month of March. This is rather new. What you see here is the sunshine. I never film in the afternoon, but today I have to because tomorrow I will not have time to film this. So the lighting might be a little different in this video. This is why. Anyway, buckle up, get a beverage, get a snack. Today will be a pretty long video, I think, because there are a lot of new orchids in bloom. We're not gonna look at everything that has flowers because we've already seen them in the month of February, so no point. Because what we like to do here is a sort of popularity contest. If you visit the description down below, you will see a link to a straw poll. You can visit it and you can vote for your favorite orchid this month. So if this sounds any fun to you, you can visit the description and you'll find a link where you can go and vote for your favorite orchid this month. So with that said, let's just get into it because, oh, there are a lot of orchids to see today. First off, a Paphiopedilum, and this is one we saw in bloom a few months ago, but today we have its second bud open. And look at this, the initial flower is still on the orchid, still looking pretty great. Isn't this a beauty? This is a hybrid. It's the Paphiopedilum Leomesezia crossed with another one that I shall not attempt to pronounce at this time. But there we have it. This is the puppy Paphiopedilum, how I like to call it, because it just looks to me like it has droopy ears, doesn't it? Anyway, this Paphiopedilum is one of those really beautiful mottled leaf paphs. It has no fragrance. Paphs are now really known for their fragrance, and it has some quirks that I do talk about in a video. Check it down below in the description. It's more of a practical approach to Paphiopedilum orchids, not necessarily a care guide, but I do talk about some things you should be aware of with these orchids because they're quite different than other epiphytic orchids we grow. Anyway, I think that's about it on this guy because we've seen him already a few months ago, but look at that. He is actually a multifloral, if I can call him like that. Next up, we have the Dendrobium cuthbertsonii. I will not insist on this guy yet again because we've seen him in bloom about 2 months ago. Well, he just opened another flower and the initial flower is still on the orchid. Take a look at the amount of buds this orchid is producing right now. It is actually full of buds. Every little cane, I think, will produce a bud. So that's a very prolific orchid. However, though, this is not an orchid that I know much about. I only have it for maximum 6 months or so, and I've only grown it in the colder months. This is a rather cool growing orchid. It has a bad reputation actually, and the real test for this one will be in the summertime. As you might know, I do live in a very warm climate, so as far as care is concerned, I cannot really give you many details right now. I can tell you that so far it's easygoing, but hey, my grow space has been intermediate this time of the year. We'll see in the summertime. Fingers crossed that everything will go well because it's a really beautiful miniature orchid that apparently blooms a lot as well. Not fragrant yet again, but definitely charming. Next up, here we have a Phalaenopsis, which is rather new to my collection. I purchased it for my birthday last year. This is the Phalaenopsis stuartiana variety Yellow Joy. This is a species. The stuartiana, at least some varieties, can have beautiful mottled leaves as well. But the attraction for me were the flowers, because typically this orchid is white, and as you can see, this one is yellow. For whatever reason, I think you can see some of the flowers are just facing downwards. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the LED panels. I will try to put it in a different location next year, but it's okay. 2 of the flowers are facing okay, the other ones are just looking down. This is an orchid which made me a little nervous because the flowers opened slowly. I think one bud took about 5 days to completely open. Now, this orchid is not fragrant. It is not known for its fragrance, although I think I recall some varieties have a sort of citrusy, maybe it's that dusty citrus aroma to them. I wouldn't call them perfumey, but definitely they are very charming with this really nice looking lip. And what I love most about this one is the flatness of the flowers. Look at this flower, even the lip is pointing downwards. It's so incredibly flat. which is amazing. Now I wish the other flowers would at least point forward, but that's okay. Anyway, it is a first time blooming orchid for me. It is an adjusting orchid, so I don't have much expectations, but I am happy it bloomed because at least I know it has not been mislabeled. Oh, another thing, when these flowers opened, they were a little white-green. I thought, oh, here we go, it's not the yellow variety, but it is. It just took about maybe a week and a half or two to develop the proper color, so you can imagine. Very interesting orchid. Next orchid is the Vandopirea Little One. Currently, maybe it's Vandopsis because one of its parents, the Sideria japonica, is now a Phalaenopsis. To be honest, I'm a little over all of these name changes, but I will check Blue Nanta and I will let you guys know. Anyway, this is a wonderful primary hybrid between the wonderful Sideria japonica, which many of you might know, and the Vandopsis Parisi, which I don't have. I always wanted to purchase it. I couldn't find it so far, but I will buy it. I have its other parent, the Sideria japonica, and well, this is the second time this orchid blooms for me. And this time on two separate flower spikes, because I have two plants in one pot. This is how I received it. Probably two seedlings were clumped together in one pot. And they are both blooming on this amazing flower show. Now, these flowers look very wild due to their dotted pattern, but smell heavenly. They have an overlayer, let's call it like that, of honey. Whenever I'm close to her, I only detect honey in all of that shelf. It's a pretty strong smell actually. So the main fragrance is sweet, honey, yummy, but then if you really analyze what you're smelling, you can detect the wonderful citrusness, if that's even a word, of the Sideria. The mild notes of citrus are just a little bit overpowered by the honey fragrance, but overall, I adore the fragrance of this orchid. I like the orchid herself as well. Also, by the way, take a look at these wild roots. I love them. Next up, an orchid that I almost lost. This is the Howeara Lava Burst. It arrived wrapped around a water cylinder. Do you know those things? Do you remember them? I will add a link to my experience with a water cylinder. It didn't work out so great, but yeah, it's a method of growing. It arrived on one of those and I could not get it to get adjusted to Ceramis or Leca or anything clay. And for about 2 years, it just kind of struggled to survive. It kept putting out a few roots and then they wouldn't grow, they would die off. So I decided to switch her to moss and then to this Repotme medium. And look at her today. Clearly, she does not care much for clay medium, but she does really enjoy organic media. So I gave up. And I'm happy I did because, oh, take a look at that color. It's a wonderful, super intense dark red. It's very vivid even though it is dark, and I'm hoping the camera can show its true nature, although I doubt it. The flowers are very tiny, they have no fragrance, but this color is absolutely amazing in my opinion. I just love red orchids. I find them to be very rare, so I am happy that I managed to save this little orchid. She is an Oncidium type orchid, easy to care for once you get the correct care, obviously. I didn't care for it properly for about 2 years or even longer. But there we have her today, pulling through with flying colors and 2 flower spikes. This orchid can actually bloom on even more impressive flower spikes than this. But this is the first time it blooms after her recoup, so I'm okay with it, but I am hoping for better displays in the future. Next up, here we have the Phalaenopsis amabilis variety art. It is the variegated variety and she's in full bloom. Now, as beautiful as the foliage is, the flowers are really simple. They're white flowers. They don't have a fragrance. Overall, they're really not the strong point of the orchid, but oh, that variegation is absolutely amazing. And furthermore, this orchid can actually create bright magenta roots. They're so bright and vivid, better than any root tips on any orchid I ever owned. Anyway, back to the orchid. There's really nothing much to tell. She is a species. She takes the very same care as other complex hybrids, really. She's not finicky, not fussy, This variegation didn't pose any sensitivity in my experience or anything of the sort. So definitely if you see this orchid for sale, at least for those root tips, I would purchase it, not necessarily for the flowers, although they are very charming as well, but for the rest of the orchid, I believe it is a must-have in any Phalaenopsis collection. She's absolutely wonderful. Next up, we have a NoID Mini Phalaenopsis Peloric. It's one of those that I purchased last year. If you remember, I have a whole bunch of mini phals. I cannot get enough of them. I like them a little bit more than the normal ones, the standard ones, if you can believe it, because they're just so tiny, so compact. It is the only mini phal which is completely open. The other ones still have buds, so we're gonna see them next month. But for now, there you have it. Isn't she wonderful? Oh, this particular flower even got a little bit of the yellow, do you see? But only on one petal. And I think the other ones didn't. No, she's the only one. How pretty is that? Next up, we have the Dendrobium aphyllum, also known as Pierardi or Cuculatum. Yes, it goes by all of these three names. Sadly, he's not in the prime of his blooms. We did film it this month, so I'll insert some footage from back then. I missed his blooming because the flowers are really short-lived. It opened about a week ago or so completely, and I thought, okay, I have time to film it. He's gonna be in bloom for about a week and a half maybe. Oh no, he's already done blooming. So sadly, the flowers are short-lived. They are beautiful when they open up, and the bigger the orchid, you can imagine, the bigger the display as well. For now, this is the best display I ever got on this orchid because I received it as an incredibly tiny seedling actually a few years ago, and I really like the flowers, but it only blooms once a year. Flowers are short-lived, so yeah, these types of orchids make sense when they're very big, so you do need to have patience with them. But I did enjoy the display. It's just that I missed filming it. I'm so sorry, but do check the description below. I'll add footage from previous videos when he was in bloom. Next up, another old Oncidium. This is actually the Oncidesa, I think it's called now. Hwuluduen Chameleon Golden Oriole. Wow, I finally remembered that name. This is an orchid I have for a very long time, but again, it's one of those that just struggled over and over again to adapt to clay medium. It didn't work out so well, I have to say, and I finally switched it. However, this orchid is in bloom, and you're gonna see the pseudobulbs are a little shriveled. I enjoyed the blooms, I got to film them. They're also fragrant. They have a kind of a fake sugar type of smell to them, but I really like it. So now the next step is to remove the flower spike, let the orchid recoup. And yeah, look at the pseudobulbs. She's really struggling right now, but she will be okay. This is actually very hardy Oncidium, and I'm surprised it remained alive after the move, because yes, I have it for more than 3 years, and after all of the stress with the semi-hydro and everything. Anyway, so there we have him. He's in bloom. I love the little flowers. The fragrance is adorable in my opinion. Smells just like candy, but I think it is time to cut the flower spike now and let the orchid recoup. He's in moss now, so he should be just fine. Next up, we have Renanthopsis Mildred Jameson. Such a beautiful orchid. I have dreamed of owning this orchid, and I had a failed attempt or two. I purchased a pretty bad looking one and it didn't survive. I had the impression these were finicky orchids, but they're not. I think, like with any orchid, it really helps if you start off with a healthy individual, particularly if you don't know much about that orchid. Until you get adjusted to its care, it's helpful for the orchid to be forgiving as well. Anyway, look at her today. That beautiful pattern of the monachica and the wonderful shape kinda of the Phalaenopsis stuartiana. Oh yes, this is a primary hybrid between those two orchids, which I just happen to have in bloom. It's such a wonderful moment when I can actually show you both of her parents. So we crossed this little orchid with this little orchid. I'm not sure if it was the yellow variety, maybe it was the white variety. Anyway, they're very similar orchids. And behold, this is what we got. We have a little bit of the shape of the stuartiana with the pattern of the monachica. The lip, I believe, is a true combination of these two orchids because the monachica doesn't really have a lip, while the stuartiana has a big lip, as we're gonna see the monachica closer as well. And being that none of these orchids are very perfumey, this one doesn't have a perfume either. But with these flowers, who needs it? You tell me, who needs a perfume when you look like this? This orchid is not fully open now, but next month will be quite crowded yet again. So I'm showing this one to you now because she's almost in full bloom. You can totally see the display. Absolutely wonderful orchid. Takes the same care as the Renanthera, pretty much for me. And I did make a care tips video. Check it down below in the description. And other than that, we're just gonna see in the future other quirks like how many times a year she will bloom. This is the first time it blooms for me. I acquired it last year. So I'm not super experienced with her yet, but I do believe this is a great start. So now let's look at the Renanthera monachica. This is a vivacious type of orchid, but it is compatible with a Phalaenopsis. They're both monopodials, and actually there were many species called Vandopsis, which are now Phalaenopsis. Anyway, reclassification is a little mental nowadays. This one is still a Renanthera. This is the beautiful monachica. Takes very similar care to Vandas for me, with a little bit of a twist, which you will learn about in the video down below. This orchid has amazing star-shaped, maybe I can call them like that, flowers. The sepals are really broad, a little bit curly. I'm sorry, my English vocabulary at this hour is not very extensive, but these sepals right here, they make all the flower for me. Look how pretty they are. If you imagine this is a dancer and these are the baggy pants, yeah, this is how it looks for me. So it's not a dancing lady, it's a dancing gentleman. P.S. for those of you who are new to my channel, the dancing lady name, such a pet peeve of mine. I never call my Oncidiums dancing ladies. I don't know why. Anyway, this orchid is not supposed to be fragrant, but it does have a little bit of a sweet apples type of smell in bright sunshine, very subtle. And I know I'm not supposed to give my opinion, as a famous YouTuber here says, but I think this is my favorite orchid in bloom this month. I don't want to influence your vote though. But yeah, there we go, the monachica finally in bloom. Next up, one of my favorites. This is the Epicattleya Renanstylis flamethrower. She's a big girl. This is one of the most prolific orchids. She absolutely loves this climate, goes outside in the summertime, and in the winter time I put her in the growth space again, and in spring she blooms. I think this is the second or third time it blooms for me. This is the showiest display anyway. I have 4 flowers on one of the canes, 2 on the other one, and 1 more solitary bud on an older cane. Can you believe that? I hoped it would be in bloom for this video, but it's not. It's almost about to burst open, but it's okay. We're just going to enjoy the other flowers. This is such a wild looking orchid for me, but the colors are just amazing. We have a very bright yellow lip with a very magenta pink bright column, and then we have the green petals and sepals. How about that flower? So all the coloration on this orchid is actually on the lip. This is not a fragrant orchid, but it is indeed one of my absolute favorite orchids. I really like epidendrum flowers. I have the Elensi, which I'm hoping to have in bloom very soon, because he has a very similar shape. I do believe I have a few other epidendrums which have this shape. I love them. There's something about this shape that is really beautiful to me, even though, you know, it's not your typical beautiful flower, but hey, I love it. And slowly but surely, I am building my collection of these types of epidendrums. Next up, we have the Leticia discolor. This is a terrestrial orchid. We recently talked about it, so I'm not gonna insist too much on it. She is in full bloom right now, but I'm not a big fan of the display. I think I'm gonna aim for a more compact display next year, as I do believe this is a once-a-year bloomer. At least for me, it has been so far. We're gonna see. But there we have it. The strong point of this orchid are not the blooms, really. The strong point is, of course, the foliage, but there we have it. She is in bloom, and I know many of you really enjoy the flowers as well. So that's a bonus, together with the wonderful foliage. And if you want to learn more about this orchid, do check the description down below. Next up, we have a NoID Cattleya, sadly, an orange beauty, which turned out to be more of a surprise than I was expecting. This orchid is fragrant. It has a mild fragrance, but it is a beautiful, very freesia-like fragrance. It reminds me a little bit of the Vandopirea, but it doesn't have that mintiness quality to it. It's just pure flowery freesias, spring. It's absolutely adorable. I really was not expecting the fragrance and the color. Need I say it? I love it. It's orange and that beautiful lip. Take a look at the veining, which are darker orange. It's straight up my alley, this orchid. This is the first time that I see it in bloom. I'm absolutely delighted with it and I cannot wait for more blooms from it. It's not a tiny orchid, Sally. It is a bifoliate, as you can see. And it's not that it's tall. If it would be tall and slender, I would be okay because I could arrange more places in which I could put it, but it's rather bushy, rather wide, so it makes it a little hard to arrange in a shelf, but it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely adore this orchid. In this video, we're gonna call her the Orange NoID Cattleya. Okay, we're approaching the end of this video, I promise. First of all, we have the Dendrobium Angelici, which is an orchid I did not see ever since I purchased this orchid. It looks a little bit like the Dendrobium Apollon, the Spring Dream, but the canes are rather thin. And also the flowers have a different shape. They're not as, let's say, compact. They're rather fluffy. They have splashes of pink and they smell really, really nice, very sweet, very springy in my opinion. Then we have the Comet King Akatsuki, which should be, at this point, the oldest orchid in my collection. It has been there ever since I started my YouTube channel. He's in bloom now, but I need to do something about that display. He's becoming a very, very big orchid. Then we have one of the most recent Dendrobiums. This is the Yellow Carnival something. You're gonna have the full name correctly written in the description below. I got this one 2 years ago, I believe, from Anna Maria, and he is a joy. He creates really nice, beautiful yellow flowers, but he's a tall orchid. I think he's the tallest Dendrobium nobile that I have. And crowd favorite, the Dendrobium Aurora, which is the most finicky Dendrobium nobile that I have, but yeah, with those flowers, I think it's only fitting. Not the greatest display on this guy, but last year he skipped blooming. As you guys might know, I do seem to have some issues with my climate and nobiles. I have too much of a long summer for them and they're trying to produce 2 sets of new growths per year, which of course don't get to mature, and this means kind of poor flowering for me. But I'm going to apply a different technique this year, so hopefully it works. But there we have them, they're in bloom. Typically these orchids have been in bloom for me always for Valentine's. And what do you know? It's April and now they're in bloom. So that is quite the delay, and it's only due to the environment. And lastly, what do you know? We have a Zygopetalum. Now don't get very excited. For those of you who missed my haul, I actually purchased this orchid in my recent seller's review with Class and Orchids. I did not grow this orchid, but I received it with a flower spike which developed, and now we do have this orchid in bloom. And to be quite honest, I don't know how often I will have zygos in bloom, but I think I know better now. And I really hope I'll do better with them. Anyway, let me just give you an ID. This is the Zygopetalum Rain Clown. I don't know, you guys, does it look like a rain clown? I mean, I'm Googling it. It doesn't seem to look like this, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. It is a beautiful, big flowered Zygopetalum orchid. Sadly though, it doesn't have that beautiful hyacinth fragrance or lily fragrance that I remember these guys had. There are a few varieties which are spicy, kind of fragrant, peppery fragrant or fragranced, and others which are just the most beautiful floral hyacinths actually that I cannot seem to get my hands on. Those are the ones that I want, and I don't know which ones those are. But anyway, this is a beautiful Zygopetalum. I think the strong point is the flower. It's huge. It's the hugest Zygopetalum flower I have ever seen, but it's not very fragrant. It has a mild fragrance. It's just not that one that I remember. However, though, it's still alive, so that's an achievement. The other one is still alive as well. I made a video about repotting the other Zygopetalum and my thought process when you actually don't know what to do with an orchid. The steps that I usually take, the research that I do, I use that orchid as an example. Links are in the description. I think that's a very useful video actually to know about, because I believe one of the most important things with orchid growing is knowing how to research, not knowing how to grow necessarily because a website tells you so. It's kind of figuring it out on your own while reading and learning from multiple sources. You know what I mean? So yeah, do watch that video down below. And with this said, this is the end of the video, finally. How long is this video? Is it a half an hour long? I feel like it is. I'm sorry, but it's only gonna get worse because we're only gonna have more and more flowers in bloom. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this though. And you know the drill, like, dislike this video, subscribe for more orchid videos, not necessarily just like this. This only happens once a month. But if you really enjoy my channel and would like to help it grow, do visit the merch store down below as well. Soon enough, we're gonna have the collectibles and I'm very excited about it. Until then, we have the usual merch. So until next time, have a great day and I'll see you next time. Bye.